YouTube, what's going on? It's J&A Exotics and welcome back. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about the top 5 things that I absolutely hate about the reptile hobby. Now, let's jump into it. Now, number 5 on today's list is going to be bad enclosure setups. Now, I'm not talking about enclosure setups where maybe you tried making a custom background in your enclosure and it didn't come out as visually presentable as you wanted it to be, because believe me, I've had plenty of those. It's a learning process. But I'm talking about these enclosures that are bare bones. There's no enrichment in the enclosure for your reptiles. You're essentially having your animals live in a tiny glass box. Now, we have all seen enclosures like this online, whether it be in pictures or reptile room videos, and it's just rage bait. You just want to pull your hair out. Now, with this being said, I do understand a bare bones minimalistic setup for a reptile that is sick. Obviously, you want to make sure that it's recovering well, you're making sure it's eating, drinking, defecating. You're going to want to pay close attention to it, so I do understand it with that. Also, I do understand minimalistic quarantine setups. You obviously want to make sure that your newer reptile is healthy, it's eating, all of that good stuff, but something to keep in mind that this is not your reptile's forever home. Now, when you are setting up a reptile's natural habitat, our main goal is to simulate their natural environment to the best of our capabilities. Now, the more we replicate our reptile's natural environments, the more comfortable and the safer they're going to feel. They're not going to be as stressed out. If they want to get away from us, they can go and hide, and we're going to encourage natural behaviors. Now, when an animal like this is stressed, it's not going to want to eat, it's not going to want to drink, it's going to want nothing to do with handling. It could possibly lash out and bite you, can lower its life expectancy, and overall, it can just lead to illness. Now, another thing I hate about bad enclosure setups is poor lighting, or for that matter, no lighting at all when the animal clearly requires it. Now, the other day online, I seen a picture of a leopard gecko enclosure. This thing was just in an empty fish tank, no lights, no heating elements, sitting in this person's house at room temperature. You have to provide the proper heating elements and a proper heat gradient. That way these animals can stay alive and healthy. Now, number 4 on today's list is going to be people who abandon their animals. Now, this topic does hit near and dear to me. I do understand that there are a few exceptions to this. Maybe it's a health crisis and you are no longer healthy enough to care for not only yourself, but your animals. Maybe it's a debt crisis. It's super unfortunate, but these things do happen. Now, there is a proper way to go about doing things. You have to make sure your reptiles have a safe place to go or a proper home before you get rid of them. You can't just show up, dump these things off at the pet shop's front doorstep, or even worse, go and dump these things off into the wild. That is not right. People who just dump animals off like that, it's cruel, it's abandonment, it's animal abuse, and you don't even understand the repercussions of your actions. Honestly, dumping your animal off into the wild is the dumbest thing you can possibly do. If the climate isn't sustainable for your reptile, it's just going to perish, and if it is, your reptile can establish a population and become an invasive species. This is exactly what's going on in places like Florida right now. With a warmer tropical climate that can sustain these reptiles, you have things like chameleons, iguanas, tegus, anacondas, pythons, and many more just running around the wild and establishing populations and absolutely decimating these ecosystems. Problems like this exist because people don't do their research. They see a reptile like a $25 Savannah monitor at the expo. They go, oh boy, this thing's awesome. Buy it with no knowledge. The thing gets way too big, or they don't have the money to feed it, and they say, oh, this is not my problem anymore, and they dump it out into nature. Now, it's unfortunate for us keepers who actually love our animals, who actually have the knowledge and care for them properly, but every few years or so, you'll see these laws and bills try to get passed into place that either limit what we can purchase as reptile owners or try to ban our hobby overall as a whole. Now, when things like this do get passed, these lawmakers are not thinking of us, thousands of people who actually love our animals and take care of them properly. All they're seeing is the bad in the situation, and that's the reputation that our hobby gets. Now, number 3 on today's list is terrible care guides. Now, when it comes to reptile care guides, you don't want to just look at one, but you want to look at several sources of information. That way you can make sure your reptile has all the husbandries it needs and it can live a happy, healthy, and long life. Now, if you happen to only look at one care guide, and it happens to be that care guide with nothing but misinformation, you can cause irreversible damages to your reptile, illness, and you can even shorten its lifespan. Now, when I'm talking about bad care guides, I'm specifically speaking about Petco and PetSmart. Your care guides are terrible. They should not be online. It's nothing but misinformation and should not be handing out pamphlets inside of the store to beginner level keepers that are going to read this and think all of this is true. Now, obviously times have changed from when I was a kid. I'm 29, turning 30 this year, but when I bought my very first leopard gecko, I used to have this little trifold pamphlet, and inside that it said leopard geckos are a desert dwelling species and they can be kept in a 10-gallon enclosure for their entire lives. That's not true. They require a 40-gallon breeder enclosure and they are not a true desert species. Now, another example I specifically remember when I was a kid is Petco's care guides for Chinese water dragons. These things said that you can keep your Chinese water dragon in a 55 to 75-gallon enclosure for its entire life. And even as a kid, I was like, that can't be right because these things like to climb and they can get about 3 feet long. Fast forward to my adulthood, and honestly, Petco's care guides are still just awful. Now for a leopard gecko, they say you can keep it in a 20-gallon enclosure, which still isn't true. Now, if you are looking for care guides, definitely don't use Petco's, but there are incredible sources out there. Obviously, now we have the internet. There's plenty of great websites that have information. There's plenty of great books, and even on YouTube, there's amazing care guides you can follow. Since we're already on the topic, number 2 on today's list is going to be retail pet stores. Now, within these retail stores, there are obviously employees. Now, I'm going to be really careful when I talk about this because I do understand within Petco and PetSmart, there are employees who are truly passionate and knowledgeable about reptiles, fish, birds, small mammals. They absolutely love animals. I'm specifically talking about the employees who do not care about these animals and they are there for their 9-to-5 job just to get a paycheck and go home and don't care about animals at all. Now, just a personal opinion, I think when it comes to these huge retail stores, they should only sell pet supplies and pet food. They should not be selling these animals because honestly, a majority of the time, they are taking care of them. Now, I do happen to stop by Petco several times a month. They happen to have the specific food brands that we feed our dogs and cat, and it's close to home. Every time we go there though, I can't help myself. I have to walk over and take a look at the reptiles. Now, my local Petco isn't the worst one I've been to, but there are still many things to complain about. Now, a large majority of the time within these stores, you're going to get a staff that has no idea what they're doing with these animals when they're caring for them. I've seen ball pythons and corn snakes housed within the same enclosures together. I've seen enclosures that are supposed to be tropical, as dry as a desert with 20% humidity. I've seen tarantula enclosures absolutely flooded and soaked. Now, if you ever walk by and someone's purchasing a reptile, if you ever watch these employees, they have no idea how to handle any of these animals. Things like leopard geckos or crested geckos or gargoyle geckos, things that can drop their tail when they're stressed out. I always feel that these employees are going in there, grabbing them with their hand, and they're always trying to squeeze them or hold them down and pet them. Like, you're gonna cause a tail drop. You're stressing the animal out, please stop. And honestly, it's always like they're afraid of the animal. Like, these things aren't going to hurt you, they're not going to bite you. Calm down, it's more scared of you than you are of it. Now, I was just talking about their care guides. That's obviously something I cannot stand and I'm not going to talk about again, but everything in these stores for your reptile are overpriced. I'm talking about things like substrates, the fake plants. You can get a larger quantity of substrate for substantially cheaper, and you can have extra, mix it yourself, keep it in a tote, and use it for all your enclosures. Now, the fake plants there too can also be insanely overpriced, and you can get the same style plant at stores like Hobby Lobby, Home Goods. You can even get them on Amazon for a fraction of the cost. These stores too also sell incredibly useless items like that tiny extendable snake hook that you see at every Petco. That thing's not going to hold a large snake. Maybe it'll hold a garter snake, but it's not going to hold a larger python. It's going to bend and break. They sell useless things like heat rocks that can actually cause damage to your reptile. It's all just junk. The other crazy thing too is feeders are insanely overpriced. At a mom and pop pet shop, crickets are typically 10 to 12 cents a piece. Petco is almost double that, and they are 18 cents a piece, which is absolutely insane. Now, I do buy my crickets online in bulk. I buy mine from Josh's Frogs. I get 500 half-inch crickets, and it comes out to just about $16 after shipping and taxes. If I were to go and buy 500 crickets at Petco, before taxes at 18 cents a piece, that's going to be $90, which is absolutely insane. Now, number 1 on today's list is going to be the reptile trade itself. Now, one of the things I'm talking about is the buying and selling of wild-caught animals. Now, when we purchase a wild-caught reptile, what we're essentially supporting is somebody going into the wild, taking these things out of their natural habitat, decimating the wild populations, and if we take too many of them out of the wild, we can drastically change these ecosystems. Also, when you do purchase a wild-caught reptile, these things are going to be coming in dehydrated from the trip and stressed out. They're going to come with illness, parasite, and the odds of these things actually making it aren't that great. Now, I do get there are a few reasons why people do buy wild caught. One of them is for conservation, so we can preserve a species. Another reason for breeding, some of these people are buying these wild caught animals to breed them within the hobby. That way we never have to take these animals out of the wild again. Now, I really don't understand why people will go and buy wild caught species like tokay geckos. These things have been in the hobby for a very long time now. There are plenty of breeders that breed captive bred tokay geckos. Honestly, if you purchase one of theirs, sure, it might be more money. It's going to be healthier, and the money's going to go to a better cause. You're supporting a breeder rather than somebody that's taking these animals out of the wild and shipping them over here. Now, this is going to sound counterintuitive, and it opposes everything I was just talking about, but without wild-caught specimens, we wouldn't have our hobby to begin with. I know this is gonna sound kind of selfish, but in a sense, I'm happy it happened. Now, there are many beneficial things for these animals that came out of breeders and keepers like us. Let's take dart frogs, for example. In the wild, their natural habitats are being destroyed by deforestation and pollution, but in the hobby, we're keeping their populations alive and well. Another example, axolotls. Even though, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's less than 100 of these things left in the wild, which is incredibly sad. In the pet trade, even though I don't think they make great pets for most people because of their care needs, there are thousands and thousands. Now, another thing I really don't like, and it might seem weird and controversial, but it's when things become the latest fad. These things aren't shoes, these things aren't purses, these things aren't video game consoles. These are living, breathing animals. Now, I'm not talking about every single keeper out there, because there are plenty of us that love our animals like their family, and honestly, we'd have entire zoos if we could afford it and have every single species because we love them so much. But I'm talking about the people who see the latest fad, whatever species it may be, and they go, oh man, that looks cool, I have to have it. 6 months to a year comes down the line, and next thing you know, this isn't the new craze anymore. They get bored of it and they don't want that animal anymore. Next thing you know, they're selling this animal, they don't want to keep it anymore, or worst case scenario, they're just going to a pet shop and saying, here you go, this is your problem now, I don't want this. I never really liked or understood the whole consumerism aspect of the trade like that. I'm not saying it's not okay to want things, because I even want things. I'm one of those people, I would have an entire zoo if I could afford it. I'd have people come, look at my animals. I would love nothing more than that. Like I said, I can't afford that. But just don't be that person that goes and buys an animal because it's the new thing, and when it's not cool anymore, you just don't want to bother with it. Those are the top 5 things I hate about the reptile hobby. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to support the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos, and I'll see you in the next one.